you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you, Victoria.
Welcome back to Music for the Harp. You have released a new collection of music that you call Classical Reimaginations. Tell us about the premise behind this collection of sheet music.
Yeah, during my grad school program, I did a recital every semester, and I took that entire collection and looked at what pieces I had to rework or adapt for lever harp, and which ones would be exciting and accessible and digestible for lever players. And through that pursuit, I came up with a collection of classical works that I titled Classical Reimaginations.
And if we are new to lever shifting, we actually had a conversation a little back while ago when we met up in San Francisco to talk about tips on approaching lever shift music, and I'll put the link to it in the video description. Now, for those who want to now pull the trigger and give it a go, can you recommend a piece that is a good starting point for us who are new to lever shifting repertoire?
Yeah, one of my personal favorites is Sonata in Re. And I think it's really accessible because it's a fun syncopated work that has a kind of like a binary form, two sections, and the lever shifting, though it's a bit challenging, it's super rewarding, and I highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah. And that particular piece come in two levels. You have an intermediate version and an advanced version. Tell us about the difference between those two.
Yeah, I think one big piece with lever shifting is when you have to change the key mid-song, but you don't necessarily want to pause or you're playing solo, so you need to keep going. And one of the distinctions in the two pieces is the approach of either putting a fermata and holding for a moment and shifting the levers, or continuing with, in this case, the right hand playing a single note with the forward momentum while the left hand shifts. So that's one of the bigger examples of the difference between the two versions. They can be considered, intermediate to advanced versions, or I kind of see them as two different approaches to adapting the same piece, and one that may work better for your fingers, or that you might actually like better in the effect of it.
Hmm. So it could be interesting for us to get both of them and kind of compare.
I personally would recommend getting both and then exploring what differences you like to keep and what you prefer not to have in your version.
Hmm. And for those who perhaps are a little bit more comfortable with lever shifting and is looking to expand their chromatic music and classical music repertoire, which pieces out of your collection would you recommend us to check out?
I personally really enjoy John Parry's Sonata. It's a Baroque era work that has three movements, and it kind of covers the gamut of what you can do on the lever harp with shifts, both single action shifts as well as more quick ones between the two hands. And it also the work just fits so nicely on the harp because it was written for the harp. It was actually written for the Welsh triple strung harp. So it's always, you can kind of tell when the composer understands the shape of the hand and how to really fit it nicely in the fingers.
And a piece of music that personally caught my eye is the Beige Nocturne. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite works for several reasons. First was doing my master's, I performed many works by male composers, and Beige Nocturne is by a female composer, Pearl Chertok, that composed in the mid 1900s. But this work really showcases all the possibilities of how harp is played. There's the lush, quick chords and the lovely phrasing and the melody, but there's also this heart-wrenching chromaticism and motion between a G flat and a G natural. And my version, I actually offer some fingering suggestions, and I have two different an intermediate and an advanced version. So if you feel like you're really not wanting to quickly move between right and left hand and get all the lever shifts to work, there's a simpler way to approach it while you still get the lush harmonies that she intended for.
And this also comes in two versions.
Yeah. Yes.
Wonderful. Now, when I was watching your video playing the Sonata and Ray, I've noticed that you were shifting multiple levers at the same time. And this is not a technique that we have talked about in our conversation on lever shifting. Do you mind sharing some insight on what you're doing in there?
Yeah, so I call it simultaneous shifts. And sometimes because it takes a bit of time to move from the center of the string up to the neck of the harp, when there are many lever shifts need to happen within a short period or at the same time, I've really kind of created my own approach where I do multiple at once. And just like as harp players, we're used to creating shapes so that we can move on the harp with ease and speed, I like to create shapes in my lever shifting with my fingers. So I might, for example, have 3 levers that have to be adjusted at the same time in the same octave. And I just put, if it's a triad, like a C chord, C, E, G, I'll just put my hand in that shape and push down on the levers. I do have chromatic levers, which are quite easy to move. And so if you're trying a piece and find it's not as easy for you, it might just be that you have a different type of lever, like a truant lever, that just takes a different amount of pressure and practice. But in general, simultaneous lever shifting, it's all about how close are the levers, so can you move them up with ease? Or what's the shape, and can you put that into your hand prior to placing your fingers on the levers? So you can do a octave shift or a triad shift, right? So it's very fun to realize how much you can tonally, the tonalities you can explore once you get comfortable with shifting those 2 or 3 simultaneously.
And let's pull up the harp and take a look how that is done.
So I'd like to say that simultaneous lever shifting is one of my favorite activities when shifting down. As we know, when you shift up, it's just a little too hard to be sure that you'll get to the levers you want. I do want to note, my harp has chromatic levers. I personally really like these levers because when I shift, I feel like I can be musical, meaning if I play a note and then I shift, it doesn't feel like it's a clunk, but it's actually a musical gesture. I also like it because each time I shift, I know that they will easily go into place and it will work with the flow of the music. So for something like Sonata and Ray, when you're changing keys from, let's say, D back to C major, what I like to do is I will make a shape with my hand, and in this case, I'll grab the C and F together, and I'll count. So if I have 4 beats, let's say I have 1 measure to change, right? I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm back to C. So the idea really is to get comfortable with putting your hands in a specific shape. So in that case, I had my fingers in the shape of a 4th. Just like when you're playing the harp, you have a 4th here versus you shift with a 4th. Now I want to shift from A major back to C major and do the same effort, except this time my shape is a little bit different. And the nice thing with the harp, at least on my harp, is that I don't have to change my shape too much depending on which octave I'm in. It's a small adjustment. So if I have 1 measure to change back, and let's say I'm playing a D chord at the same time, I can keep it going. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, right? So I think something really important to think about is what is the mood of the piece you are playing? Because if you're shifting, even if you physically can shift, if the mood of the piece is very slow, shifting quickly might be a distraction. So in some cases, I would say, with a lot of these pieces, I have sections where I add a measure or 2. And the reason why it works is because I'm thinking about the mood and I'm keeping the flow of the key change with that mood. So you notice that, okay, even though I might be taking a little bit more time, it's a gesture that matches. And so people don't think about it. And I always say to lever players working on lever shifting repertoire, your audience doesn't come to see you shift 100 levers, they come to hear good music. So as you're having fun shifting, make sure the visual you're presenting matches the experience they want to have.
And what I'm hearing too is that you can practice the lever shifting as if it is part of the music and work with it in the way that makes sense musically. And that I think that's a very important sort of takeaway for me as I'm approaching these pieces.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell us where we can find your sheet music.
Yeah, if you visit my website and enter the main page, there's a tab in the top right corner that says sheet music. And if you're wanting to join my newsletter and get monthly updates on what I call sheet music picks of the month, when you put in my website, you can go directly to the newsletter button and join there.
That's awesome. And I'm going to put some links to your website and to joining your mailing list in the video description as well. Thank you very much for sharing classical reimagination with us today.
I really appreciate your great questions, Victoria. It's a pleasure to share.